Habits 365 Conscious Minds podcast.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Conscious Minds podcast. My name is Chris Holber. I will be your host for today, and I am joined with my co-host, founder and CEO of Habits 365, Spencer Zeig. Spencer, it's great to have you.
Chris, always a pleasure. So today we are joined by a very special guest. He is known best for his work on ESPN as a broadcaster, more recently for the college football playoff. Chris Fowler, welcome to the show.
Spencer, Chris, great to be with you guys. I'm looking forward to this, man. First of all, I'm repping the brand because I respect Habits 365. I respect the journey. I respect the messaging, and I like the product too. So anyway.
And you're looking great in it. I can't say anything else other than that.
Yeah, loving the pocket tee. You always can't go wrong with a little bit of drip.
Some of your stuff, I don't know if it's age appropriate for me, the entire catalog, but there's enough pieces that I really connect with. So
that's good. I'm glad we found the spot.
I don't think you want me to connect with everything you guys put out. It would be a serious problem if I like everything you're doing.
Well, as long as you found a few things that you like.
More than a few.
Excellent.
And once we see you shopping down the kids aisle, I mean, maybe that's when we have to be like, okay, don't go down that route. But.
Yeah, I got nephews and people and stuff like that who are much more in the lane of some of the stuff I see, but it's all good. I respect what you guys do.
All right. Thank you. And obviously we feel the same. In terms of your, initial involvement with the brand, what kind of drew you to it initially? Maybe you could talk a little bit about kind of how you found out about it and how you kind of connected with me and, got involved from that.
Yeah, I found it on social media, like a lot of people. I became aware of it. And we have some mutual friends, and they said, hey, this guy and his brother running this company. I love that kind of thing. I love young entrepreneurs and sort of, their path to get traction and the creative process behind developing what they're looking to sell. And so I became aware of it that way and started hunting around. And then we reached out, and then, I actually bought some stuff before I got any free swag. I think that's how that worked out. But I have laid out the credit card for plenty of the items. And just the more I looked into it, the more I saw that there was something behind the brand, that there's something behind the name. Because obviously Habits 365, you kind of nod your head. You go, okay, I think I know what that means. It's about developing daily habits that help your life. But I want to look into it more. And once I found out there was messaging behind it, because there's lots of companies out there selling T-shirts, right? And I'm not exclusive to you guys. I have my T-shirt brands. I order a lot of stuff online, and now more than ever. But I like that you guys kind of stood for something, and that you were incredibly diverse and it would be an open-minded and inclusive. I like that very much about the philosophy behind the company, but also the products you're doing. So it's all good.
All right. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I would say, like, as that connects, because obviously you connected with the message in particular, as it pertains to just your career over the last few decades, how have you felt that your habits have contributed to your success? And what has that been like for you, that journey, just building habits and just kind of seeing what works and seeing what doesn't?
Yeah, that's a massive question, man. I could talk for a half hour, but I'm not going to. Don't worry. No, I think that habits are just essential to a happy life, and the components of happiness for me are being centered and calm and balanced and mindful and present, and a lot of that psychobabble jargon that's so popular today, but really does contribute to happiness. And so if you can develop the kind of habits that will help you achieve peaceful, calm center, the ability to tune out the static, which is one of the keys to life. It's one of the keys to happiness, is to be able to have a durable, resilient, calm, centered, focused inside, so that no matter what is swirling around you, no matter what you're hit with, no matter how many obstacles or challenges or problems are piled on top of you, you don't see it as overwhelming. You see it as manageable, and you can cope with this because you have a strategy for it. You have the skills for it. You develop the habits for it. And that's a big thing. I mean, that's just about life. My career is just a part of who I am. It's how I make money, but I don't self-identify mainly as a broadcaster or someone on TV, I mean, so it all ties together. And whenever I give people advice who want to do what I do for a living, or they're just in college and they're looking at their future, I mean, a lot of what I talk about would come under the heading of good habits, of just figuring out what kind of person you want to be, what kind of person you don't want to be, and how the habits feed into that. Because that's way more important. I don't know what the age of the listener, if they're younger people or not, but I always stress this: is like, just don't sweat your future so much. I talked to you about that, Spencer. Just like, it's like the present gets you ready for that improvement, daily mindfulness. That's what gets you ready for your future. If you sit around and put your mind a month, a year, 10 years down the road, it's sort of like fruitless, man, because you just don't know the path that you're going to take. You don't know the options you're going to have. But if you stay mindful of what kind of person you want to be and what kind of person you don't want to be, the values you want to represent, how you want to treat people, how you want to act, and then just sort of develop the skills to be centered and focused and calm, and understand that, you know, you knowing yourself, you believing in yourself, feeling good about yourself is 1,000 times more important than what other people think. So dive into like more specifics, because this is just kind of meta, but there are a lot of things that I've sort of developed and kind of fine tuned over time that are daily habits and things that are so automatic now. You don't have to think about it. And that's an important thing to know about habits, as I'm sure you guys know, is when your subconscious mind takes over and you don't have to think about what you're doing all the time, it frees up your conscious mind to do stuff that's really more fun and more important.
Yeah, and that's a really good point because like we are just habitual creatures at nature. We do things daily. We think about the same things we thought about yesterday for the most part, and it just seems that the future is just an unknown factor. You can only control what you do right now, and I think that's really important in terms of whatever your career is going into or who you want to be as a person, just in general. I feel like creating those habits and being mindful and like conscious about your inner environment and like not having anything outside of you affect you too much is one of the most important things about success. Do you think you have always maintained a very good level of internal environment where you're in control of like how you feel, what you think, like what you do on a day-to-day basis that kind of led you to the career and the person you are today?
Oh, hell no. Absolutely not.
Definitely not.
I mean,
No way.
that's why when I talk to Spencer and other young people, I'm impressed because you guys are way more evolved and together than I was at that age. I mean, there's no way that I've always been able to sort of check my temper, check the ego, check all the things we're talking about to get calm and centered. I'm 59 as of yesterday, so shit, it's taken me a long time to figure some of this stuff out. So not always been that way. And I spent,
Yeah.
I've been at one employer, a lot of different jobs, but one employer for like 35 years. So within that professional path, no, there's been a lot of times when I've been very frustrated. I've let things like emotions like bitterness, resentment, feeling taken advantage of, not fully utilized, not appreciated, not going where I want to go. Those things come in. That's just human nature, man. I'm not going to tell you that I sat on this path at like 23 and had my shit together, and I was evolved. No, 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 no. But that's important because the lessons stick if you have to learn them the hard way, right? And I do believe uh, it's not just psychobabble that all experience equals growth. And sometimes the more intense the experience, even if you might classify it as a negative one, I don't use negative positive, but let's say it's challenging or it's a setback or it feels uncomfortable. Those are the ones you're able to grow the most from by coming through. And I've had plenty of experiences like that. I mean, my lot in life was pretty good. I count my blessings. I mean, we've all had challenges. We all deal with stuff that no one else knows about. Everybody you encounter, I try to preach being tolerant and patient with people because their behavior might seem really whacked, but you don't know what they're going through and have gone through, and you don't know what developments in their life has shaped them. So I think that leads you to be more empathetic and compassionate, and hopefully a bit more patient and understanding, which we desperately need right now because it's very easy to put you're labeled this, you're that, I'm this group, you're that tribe, and that's such a problem with what we are right now. And I think that if you sort of remember that everybody has stuff,
Yeah.
and you're not responsible for that, but if you're aware that it's likely they're going through some things that you can't see and will never know, and that might be what's shaping their behavior. So it might influence your reaction to them. We all still snap. We all lose it. Okay, I'm not like Mr. Spock for those of you old enough to understand the Star Trek reference, but it's like no one's perfect. But I think over time you realize there's great value in pursuing, a calm, centered, empathetic, compassionate view.
But how do we, especially Gen Zers and, younger millennials are very passionate about their beliefs and their viewpoints and what they think is the one and only reality. And
Lose that. My advice would be forget what you just said. And not the passion part. But listen. I mean, we could get kind of deep, and I could get Eastern, but I just believe in seeking and not establishing entrenched beliefs, because once you do that, you're really closed off
You
from
limit
other
yourself.
ideas. Right? Maybe you're closed off from shaping new habits. Maybe you're closed off from some philosophy or someone that in your life can contribute something that really is interesting to you and can help you. But I got my beliefs. So I would say, and I think you're right, Spencer. I think there's a lot of people who are really young, and yet boom, this is what I believe, and this is everything is shaped by this. And I like to use the word dogma a lot, or dogmatic. I don't believe you should make choices and decisions based on really rigid sets of belief. You get choices to make, you got options. Like, just take it case by case and tune out the static. And the static is society or your peer group, your parents, or YouTube telling you what to believe and what to think. And independent thought, being able to disconnect from external stuff, which tells you what you should do and what you should think, is so crucial. And if you can just take the mindset that you're always seeking, you're always trying to improve and grow, rather than I believe this is what I'm in this group, and this is what we believe, and this is what we do. I'm not easy, because you're sort of as humans programmed to behave in a certain way based on who you hang out with, how you grew up, and all that stuff.
But how do we get out of that? You made very good points. How do we get out of that as a society, that, box of I'm in this group and you're in that group and this is my belief?
One person at a time. I can't answer questions for society. I mean, I think, I don't like what I see. The divisions are so deep right now. The mindset is so tribal. I don't think you can snap your fingers. I don't think changing the administration is going to fix it. I don't think that it's hard to break the cycle we're in right now. But individually, I think it can be done by just doing what I said, and understanding that you don't know very much. People, I think the older you get, sometimes the more you realize the less you really know. It's one of those paradoxes, right? So you become less certain of things the more years you spend on the planet, and that's okay. That's part of seeking and being open. And so maybe it's just anybody listening to this deciding, you know what, I'm going to shake up my beliefs. I'm going to set them aside. I'm going to observe and maybe not operate from such a rigid place right now, because this is my tribe and this is what we think and this is what we do and this is who we don't like. You got to start individually, right? You got to start one person at a time. You can't fix the world. You can't change society or your generation even, but you can look at yourself.
Sure.
Yeah, and what I like to use this analogy for like people's beliefs, like a lot of people's beliefs, and like they take their experiences as the truth, right? Usually you don't look outside of what you've experienced as truth. Everything that you have dealt with, whether it's past experiences or beliefs, it's all been instilled and downloaded into your brain. And what I say is, like, everyone has kind of like a slice of the pie, right? Whatever this whole pie, whatever the universal truth of whatever everything is, right? This Eastern philosophy, all of this connectedness. Everyone has that slice, but I feel like what you were saying is not to be so stuck in how you view things, but to take other people's slice of the pie, which they probably have some part of that truth, or whatever is a common connectedness or greater understanding between how everything kind of happens and like what's actually happening.
I think that's really true. It takes work though, because listen, all of us have been boxed in. All of us as life experiences have shrunk. The world has gotten littler. The stuff we haven't been able to do has been a bigger focus than the possibilities that are out there, what we can do. But now that's kind of lessening. I think a way to do what you're talking about is to, first of all, read different kinds of books, go on different kind of sites. Don't just follow people on platforms that you agree with.
Yeah.
Your different points of view. Be open to that. Meet different kinds of people. And that's a lot about what the college experience is, or the post high school out in the real world experience. You don't have to go to college to meet different people with different backgrounds and different mindsets. You can do that anywhere you live. But being exposed to that, travel is a big part of it. It has been a huge part of it for me, because you literally have your eyes open to places that are very different from where you grew up. And that's been tough. But I tell anybody, whether you want to call it a gap year, or you do something with your free time, go somewhere that is different from what you're used to being, and maybe it's out of your comfort zone. I don't mean like, if you grew up with some money, doesn't mean visit 5-star resorts all over the world. That's not enough variety. I'm talking
Yeah.
about different kind of places. Get uncomfortable, rough it a little bit, see how other people live, listen to what they're saying. Don't go there and check off things like this is I did this country, and I did London, and I did Paris. No, walk around, listen to how people talk, watch them. Be super observant and just take it all in, and it will affect you. It will have an impact on you. And if you get out of the cities and get to rural places, or places where developing countries, I mean, those are life-changing, perspective-changing moments, and the lessons you get there will stick with you. So I'm doing a podcast episode, Spencer knows this, on sort of different alternative paths for young people who are college age. Maybe not, they didn't go to college, or they use college differently than most, or they dropped out, or whatever, and sort of the range of experiences that they're able to have. And I just think if anybody listening is in college, make use of it, man. I think people just walk through college without getting the most out of it. Spencer and I, we talked a lot about this. If you don't take your education upon yourself, if you're going to view it as a one-way thing, I'm sitting here and it's linear, and the professor is just talking at me, or I'm just reading this book, man, you're missing an opportunity that's there. You to learn from your fellow students, to make it, far less linear and more like horizontal, and just take it all in, and then use something you hear as a spark to do your own investigation, to read your own books, to educate yourself. It's not just about marking time and getting to the next weekend and the next party. And I don't want to sound like a professor, but
Those things aren't great, but it's
no,
all
there's nothing wrong with parties. I wish I'd partied more in college. I was very much nose to the grindstone, get ready for my future. I didn't practice what I preach, by the way. I didn't have a lot of life balance when I was in school. No girlfriend ever understood why I worked every single weekend night in some media job, trying to make a contact or make some money. I actually needed to make money, so I was part of it. But they didn't care what the reasons were. They just cared that you weren't available socially. So, and I went to University of Colorado. It's a very social campus, believe me. So I missed out on a lot of that stuff. I took 5 years to get out of school. It worked out well, obviously. I mean, the things that I did, the choices I made, helped me develop skills, get better, understand my weaknesses and strengths, and make contact. So all of it worked out. I mean, you guys can relate to that. But I do think that there's nothing wrong with it, with enjoying and relaxing and decompressing and not stressing. When I did all these, I don't mean to say that I was stressing about my future. I enjoyed every job I did, for the most part, and I needed to do them for money. So it wasn't like I was obsessed with my future. I didn't know where it was going to lead exactly. I was just trying to, hey, let me get better as a writer. Let me get reps talking into a mic for my campus radio station, talking into a camera in my apartment against a wall, even more boring than this one, and trying to figure out how to speak into a lens. All those things were important to learn. So I wasn't there like, oh my God, I have to get ready for some career. It was just like much more, day by day, week by week.
like more of a leisurely thing, right?
Sorry?
More of a leisurely thing. Like it was kind of.
I would call it leisurely. I would just call it present. I wasn't focused on where I was exactly going to lead specifically. I just think it's foolish, man. I mean, what you imagine your life to be, it's not going to be what it's going to be. What you imagine your career to be, it's going to be far different. You're going to look back right now and laugh at what you thought, because you just can't predict the way that life's going to lead you and the choices you're going to make and be presented with. So why stress on it? I mean, I never sat there in college and thought, well, this is what I have to do with my career. I want to get this job, work at this place, cover these sports, make this amount of money. I mean, honestly, things like what I would call the secondary benefits of it, um, money and fame and that kind of thing. I mean, I swear to God, never entered into it. I didn't know what people made in this business. I didn't care. It wasn't about a dollar figure. I never, ever set goals for myself about, I want to be this market by this age. I want to make this money and be, and be, as far as being quote unquote famous or recognized, that was never part of it. It's shocking to hear that. I mean, people don't buy that all the time because they think that, being recognized is an important part or feeds your ego, but it really doesn't. I mean, if you get a little bit of fame, you realize it's not, you don't want to be super famous. So that's not, it was never about that for me. And I think it's important to understand what it is that attracts you to what you want to do. Like, right. I mean, it never was money or fame for me. So I never made any decisions in my career when faced with choices, what's going to pay more, what's going to get more eyeballs in what I do. Never occurred to me, right? Honestly.
That's impressive because I don't
know if it's impressive. I don't know. It's not noble. It's
a testament to who you are.
Maybe it's lucky because I just did this. This wasn't important to me. I mean, I didn't grow up with a lot of money. My family was, we had enough, but we had no luxuries or extravagances, and I just didn't place a huge importance on that.
How do you balance what you were saying before of, so you want to prepare yourself for a career. You don't know what that career will be. You don't know exactly what that will entail. Of course, you can't predict the future, but you want to set yourself up. So how do you balance the hard work now to get to later without really knowing what later is?
It's a good question. I mean, by establishing what's going to be important to you and the values you're going to have and that you're going to apply to whatever you do for a living, as well as the rest of your life. Work ethic, commitment, you deliver on what you say you're going to do, just in small ways. That's a great habit. Just be reliable and don't be unreliable, because that's almost expected right now, right? You guys, you both work and you manage. It's so many people do not do what they say they're going to do not deliver what and when they're supposed to deliver. And it's like, just don't be that. Just learn to be reliable, detail-oriented, sweat the details so you don't waste your time in the future and you don't waste other people's time. Those are small things that have huge benefits. I don't care what it is you do. Like, I work with a lot of people. I hire young people who are freelance researchers, people who help me out in different ways. And I have a pretty good sense of, at this point, you make mistakes, of who's reliable, who's intuitive, who's not just going to be a robot and listen to what they're being told to do, but figure out what works, figure out a step ahead, how, and then learn to trust your instincts in that, because you're observant and you're smart and you're taking it all in and you're not just walking through some job that you consider menial. You're just putting the best into it. So, I mean, but those are habits, right? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, those are things you develop where over time, no matter what you're doing, you're still applying the same things to that. You're still using the same habits. You're not procrastinating. You're being reliable. You're being detail oriented. You're showing up on time. You're having respect for other people's hours.
Yep.
And not making their life harder because you got careless for 30 seconds, right? I mean, it sounds like no fun, but it really is, because then you realize, I got my shit together, and nobody's perfect. You're going to lapse. I do too. But just by remembering that stuff, those are things, especially, you don't know what your career is going to be like, but if you work hard, if you have high standards for yourself, if you don't compromise, you don't get sloppy, you pay attention to details, have respect for other people and their time, listen to their ideas, be collaborative. God, that's a huge head start to whatever you want to do.
It is, because it's almost the foundation of your true character are these habits that you bestow upon yourself. Like, you can only be as great as you believe yourself to be. And when you have your own ceiling, you almost create a sense of, oh, I'm almost limiting myself of what I can become. It's like you said with the beliefs. It's like if you only stick to your own beliefs about what you might do in your future, you're already limiting yourself. You have no clue what's going to happen. It's just better to be open about everything and just work on your foundation now. So whatever does happen, you're prepared for. It's not really like the meticulous stuff that matters, right? It's more so about how you are as a person, what you do kind of day in and day out to like prepare yourself for what could happen.
Yeah, that's a great point. Go ahead and dream big. Don't limit yourself. But that's part of what I was saying before about being a
Yeah.
seeker and not being limited, not being closed off. Um, you know, I never imagined when I specifically started that I would end up doing what I'm doing now. But listening to your gut is a concept that is so crucial. It's used a lot. People don't really know what that means or how you get to a place where that inner voice comes through
Mm.
and you learn to trust it. It's not going to be 100% right. I've certainly made mistakes or something that felt right or felt wrong that wasn't.
Huh.
And you're going to have regrets. You're not going to bat 1,000. Certainly, I've made some poor investment choices, some poor real estate things that I should have done that I didn't.
Yeah.
I think I made a great relationship choice. I've been married for 22 years happily. And in terms of my job, I will say this: I'm actually very proud of this. That when I've been presented with options and choices in the course of working for one company for 35 years, my batting average is pretty damn close to 1,000,
Mm.
and that's partly luck, but in that area, I've been able to cut the static out, ignore what other people said, even people who mean well, who care about you and love you. They don't know what's best for you all the time. And I think that's
Yeah.
the part of developing as a younger person, understand that mom and dad love you. They don't know what you want or what's best for you. I'm sorry sorry parents, but that's just part of growing up. And neither do your big brothers and sisters and uncles and friends and professors and advisors. They all mean well. They all have their own background and experience and think they know what's best for you, perhaps, and they might express it really strongly. Doesn't mean they're right. So, in the area of making career choices, by tuning all that shit out and just kind of following the compass that I set, which is ain't going to be about money. It's not going to be about the most eyeballs watching what you do. It's going to be about finding something that's fulfilling, challenging, enjoyable with people you want to work with. Right?
Have you found that through this type of like adventure type seeking? You followed what your kind of core values were, and everything kind of just fell in place after that. Do you think it's important to follow like your passion, what you want to do? Where's your happiness
Absolutely,
going to
man.
lie?
I hope this is clear. When I say remember what the essence of what you're doing attracted you in the first place, okay? Like maybe it is making money at Habits. Maybe it's not. I don't know what it is, but there's no problem with a business trying to make money, by the way. That's a perfectly normal, acceptable thing for a business to make their number one goal. But whatever it is, keep that goal in mind. Remember what it was. For me, it was just conveying the excitement of live sporting events to people like me who sat at home and listened and got pumped up about that. That's when I'm 10 years old, I fell in love with it. I want to do this job since I'm 10. So
Wow.
the essence of it is authentically being excited and conveying passion about some live sporting event that's unscripted. Who knows what's going to happen, but let's all find out together. Like that's it. So even if you get turned off of that path, even if that's not exactly what I was doing at College Game Day for 25 years,
Yeah.
it was a really happy accident. It was an amazing quote unquote detour. It had a lot of the feelings of a live sporting event because we were in front of 10,000 people and it was very spontaneous and unscripted. And I had a lot of things that attracted me. That's what I really like about broadcasting. And I also learned what I didn't want to do. So you're asking, following your passion and putting you on this path, it's way more important to figure out what you don't want your life to look like, what you don't want your days to feel like. Because your life is a
Yeah.
big thing. But what do you want your day to feel like in terms of your employment? Do you want to be alone and solitary? Do you love working with people? Do you want to be in an office? Do you hate offices and you've got to be outside? Do you like a regimented schedule with discipline? Is that good for you? Do you hate structure? The last thing you want is to have everything structured. You got to know yourself well enough through trial and error and just asking yourself questions to figure that out and figure out what you don't want your days to look like. And if you can avoid that, then you'll avoid getting on track to an unhappy job. I see so many people, fellas, and it's like, God, the best case scenario for them is to have a midlife crisis. That's the best that can happen when you'll figure out in a lightning bolt moment, this is not what the hell you want to do. Some
Yeah.
people never have that moment. They just go and have an unhappy career and they grind away at something that's not satisfying, not fulfilling. They're not happy. They do it just for the money to keep food on the table, and you get locked into doing what you have to do. And I understand that. But if you're on guard for that, if you are tuned in to what makes you happy and fulfilled, I mean, just do what you're passionate about. It's a simple thing,
Yeah.
love
And I
what you
think,
do.
yeah, and I think it's so cool that you mentioned that when you're like 10 years old, it was kind of like a dream of yours to like be on that platform that you are now today. Do you
Yeah.
think that kind of like the details of how you got that don't really matter as much? Do you think that dream kind of connected you to where you are now? Like, do you feel like at 10 years old when you had all these dreams of an aspiration of becoming that sports commentator, was that kind of a connecting piece to where you are now, do you think?
Right. I don't think it was a coincidence, right?
No, I think that, look, I mean, a lot of people have dreams and ideas. I'd like to be a rock star, and that to me, like, I would have growing up, I want to be like, this is before your time, but I wouldn't be like, Jimmy Page or David Gilmour playing the guitar solo in Comfortably Numb. I had zero talent as a musician, so that did get in the way.
Yeah.
I had the passion, I had the desire. I thought that would be a pretty good life to be a rock star. I happen to know some of them. It's harder than it looks, and it's got all jobs have their own challenges, and they go through all that kind of stuff. And they would tell you they want to do what I do, but some of them.
Yeah.
But you have to be realistic. I mean, we all are born with certain skills and innate abilities. I'm not going to tell you that doesn't factor in. It does. I mean, doing what I do, I'll just tell you, they call the job talent, as you might know. That isn't a description of my abilities. That's just what the job is. And the reason why it's labeled that is because it does take some stuff that you can't learn easily. You can overcome tremendous shyness or speaking problems or the ability to think on your feet. You can gain skills, but to a certain degree, when you do that, as you guys know, it's kind of like playing music or acting. There are many others for whom it comes easily.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you can't catch up. It just means you're going to have to work really hard to do it in a competitive environment. And I see that with kids. I talk to kids who want to do what I do, and there's 30 of them. And in the 30, right, there are a few who go, okay, obviously they have it. They communicate freely. They're glib. They think in their feet. Their voice is okay. They don't have a face for radio, whatever it is. You sort of like, okay, then there's others who are, they're going to have to work harder. And then there's some in any group, it's a bell curve idea. I don't want to tell them this. It's not my place, but you're going to really have to work hard. Not because you can't do it, but just because you're going to be competing against people that have a head start because of some natural abilities. And that kind of goes for anything. If you're trying to get into business, but you struggle with numbers, shit, you better hire some good people because you're going to struggle. You're going to have a hard time in a meeting keeping up with people who are just, it's shorthand, right, Spencer? I mean, the numbers and the math, and so much of it is about that. Like, that wasn't a strength for me. God, there's no way I would have gotten into a field where, is going to be about quantum mechanics. I mean, or super advanced accounting or understanding what my hedge fund guy's talking about. I mean, that's not a strength of mine. I could probably grind away forever and like be competent.
It's not as natural for you.
That is natural, and you're going to have a hard time getting where you want to get. So I mean, being realistic with your own strengths and weaknesses and abilities is important early in the process too. So again, that doesn't mean get discouraged, but it just means not every dream is meant to be realized.
There's a difference between a dream and wishful thinking, and like said it best. Like,
and how do you tell a 17-year-old that wants to be in the NBA that he's only good enough for D3? How do you balance that confidence with delusion? How do you separate the two and make sure that obviously there's something you can do about it, but as the person themselves, that 17-year-old, what's their check?
Reality check.
Yeah.
Give them a reality check.
Is the 17-year-old your height, or is it maybe? I know you can shoot a little bit. I know you're a pretty good shooter. That's the scouting report I've got from our mutual friend. But I don't know if that you could have a spot in the D3 roster if you can hit from 23 feet. You
I
can
think I
play
could have made D.
basketball some,
I think I could have made D3 if I really put the work in. I think I could have.
but it
You
wasn't
don't need to
important
be
to you, right?
tall.
It was you had no you D3 is not, you're not going to get your college paid for that way. If you love basketball that much, there's
Some
nothing
people.
wrong with that, by the way. I mean, there's nothing wrong with pursuing something that just because you've always wanted to give it a shot. And but like it was pretty clear to me early on that my athletic ability was limited. I wasn't going to make a living at it. I wasn't going to get a college scholarship where I wanted to go to school doing it, but describing it, talking about it, being around it, learning from coaches and athletes is what I've been able to do. But if you're 17 and you think you're going to be in the NBA, and you don't look around and are able to honestly assess your own abilities and where you stack up, and the commitment that you're willing to make, then you need to get to know yourself better. And I think that's the kind of stuff that I hate to say it because you don't want to stop dreaming, but like there are some things that are just not going to happen because they cannot be achieved with hard work. Like you hear that anything you can do anything if you put your mind to it and hard. And I don't want to shoot down that idea. I just want to say it's going to be much, much harder than you understand.
Oh
And
yeah.
maybe there's a path that's going to be more fulfilling, more satisfying, and happier than trying to have me learn how to be Stevie Ray Vaughan. Because I don't think that I had that in me. Guitar wasn't easy for me. Like
Hmm.
and maybe it's not noble to have bailed on it when I did. A lot of my friends play really well, but not like professionally well. I mean, you don't need another like mediocre guitarist to go up there and like play in their buddy's bachelor party in a band or something. I mean, that wasn't what I wanted to do. If you're going to do it, you want to be great at it, and it was pretty obvious to me I wasn't going to be great at it, and I wasn't going to be a great athlete. So you sort of
Yeah,
follow, I think, where you feel connected, where you feel like, I got a chance to do this. This feels right to me. This is fulfilling to me. Generally the things that we do well are the things that are fun, right?
yeah,
I
Generally,
mean, if you're good at some game or some sport or some activity, and you're told again and again you're good at it, you believe you've seen yourself improve. It's pretty fun. It's fun to
yeah.
be good at something, right? So
Hmm.
you play college ball. So what was that like for you? And Chris, by the way,
Yep.
that 17-year-old, that wasn't me. That was a mysterious 17.
okay,
You
I just wanted to make sure you didn't think you're still going to the NBA.
no.
Yeah.
I gave that up when I was about 12 years old. Don't you worry. Once
Maybe
I
the
realized that
developmental league,
I wasn't going to
maybe
get
the
above
summer league, Spencer. Maybe the summer league, but
maybe
not
summer.
the full NBA.
Right. But like CH for you, how was that kind of realization and kind of as you've fulfilled that passion of yours, kind of what was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, like, you obviously, for me, like, I think I'm a special case because I've self-assessed myself every single day, and I've always felt out my natural abilities, what kind of where my strengths are, where my weaknesses are, and I've tried to double down my strengths. So, like, basketball, I knew I was just naturally good at. I come from a pretty athletic family, so basketball has just come pretty easy to me. But like what Chris was saying, actually, I thought that was a really good point about like once you find play in what you do, that's the best thing that can ever happen to you. Because once work starts feeling like play, it's not work anymore. It's something you enjoy doing like as a kid. It's like building like Lego blocks and like creating things. I mean, it's not something that feels like it takes any effort. The effort's kind of naturally drawn.
Did basketball become a chore for you? Did it become something that wasn't fun? Because there's an example. Like whatever first attracted you to basketball, maybe it became easy to you. Whatever it was, whether it was being the competitive part of it, just the expression of athletic ability, whatever. Once you start to get away from that, it can be something different. Then it can feel like a job, and then it's not
Yeah.
fun anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm still waiting for that to happen with basketball. So like I'm very happy that that hasn't happened yet. But I
Well,
have one
maybe you
year
weren't
left.
doing it 12 hours a day. See, I'm around tennis players, and man, you got to be 4 years old putting a racket in your hand, or you're behind. Now, some players do come to it later. Some players don't get burned out because they're able to sort of measure the commitment they make, and they don't let it grind them down. But man, you just see one after another who's burnt. They forgot, or it just eroded over time through no doing of their own what they loved about it in the first place, if they even loved
Oh,
it in the first place. Sometimes you just hand it or do this. Maybe somebody gave you a ball and say, this is a basketball family, you play basketball. Well, I mean, a lot of kids get put in that position. They don't really love it
Yeah.
the same way the rest of their family does, but they feel pressured to do it.
Yeah, and I have felt pressured to do certain things, but luckily for me, like I've always been naturally drawn to sports, so it's like I feel like anyone that can find what they're naturally drawn to and double down on it, I feel like that's the best route you can take rather than seeing someone and putting someone like on a pedestal, like your dream player or this or that, and then trying to aspire to be them when they're the ones that are almost losing sight out of who they actually can become because they're putting this figure on a pedestal and they're saying, I want to be that, yet they can't look themselves in the mirror and be like, okay, maybe I won't be that. There's some things that I might be actually better at that I'm not taking into account yet because I'm so lost into this idea of me rather than who I actually am.
And you said something before, CH, that I'm not sure. I want to go to Chris for the tiebreaker. You said if something is enjoyable and you like it, it's no longer work. I don't quite agree with that. I do think that it is still work. I think you're allowed to enjoy work. I think what's happened is society has conflated work with misery, and that's why, oh, if it's fun, if I enjoy it, okay, it's not really work. I still do think it is work. Chris, what do you think on that?
Are you asking me to break a tie?
Yeah.
This might be one of those deals where you're like semantics are getting in the way. I mean, I think that
It is semantics.
I mean, because you love it doesn't mean it's not work. I mean, and I do love my work. I mean, it's hard, it's challenging, but that's kind of why I like it. I sit around all the time and try to figure out how do I come up with a new challenge? How do I come up with something that doesn't feel like I can do it on autopilot? It's really dangerous in life. I mean, that's kind of maybe overstating it, but it's sort of, I've found it something that I got to be aware of. When you can just do something like in third gear and comfortably cruise through and be passable, at it without really putting your all into it, that's sort of like, for me, that's a kind of an alarm bell. Like then it's becoming too comfortable and too easy, and you're not growing doing it. It's enjoyable to a point, but for me, what gets the juices flowing is some kind of new challenge. I mean, when I moved into tennis, calling tennis matches, but being a football guy, like the people were very suspicious in the tennis world, including the people I work with. Like I had to win over Johnny Mack. Who is this guy? I mean, I respect him. I watch the football games he's done, but I don't know if he knows my sport. I don't know if he gets it at all. I don't know if what's he doing in this booth? Well, once you show somebody that you are authentically fired up to do what you do, so there's no jaded component to it. Like, I'll dabble over in this little sport of tennis here, even though far fewer people watch it. It's kind of fun. No, I dove in with an authentic passion because I was a tennis fan from the same age I was a football fan. I wanted to be, like Jimmy Connors and John and those guys when I was like 10. Again, lack of ability did get in the way. But, I sort of had a passion for tennis. So when you're going into something like that's new, and you should never try to speak with false authority, right? Because people can smell that a mile away. Like I can't go into the booth and start acting like I know what it's like to be a high level tennis player because I read a book or watched a match. I've never had the first person experience. So you defer to those guys, but you better damn well show that you're fired up, that you did your preparation, that you take it seriously, that there's no less of a commitment to calling a match in the Australian Open in the middle of the night that a few 100,000 people are watching than there is to coming what you just did calling a championship game in football with 25 million people watching. Okay. Yeah. I never make a distinction about that. I don't put in less commitment because less people are watching. I don't say, I'm going to mail this in because this is not the Wimbledon final, or this is just a regular season game involving two non-contenders in September. No, it's the same every week. And that's what I think that's what we're kind of talking about with habits. The work ethic, the commitment. I don't allow myself to get jaded, but I'm lucky that I don't have to kind of push that out of there. We all do a little bit, kind of feel like, oh, okay, this is old hat. I can mail this in. I mean, it's human nature to cut corners and do things as easy as possible, right? So you got to work against that a little bit. But I always believe in stepping out. I mean, I may do some hockey play-by-play. This is a scoop, but which is we have the contract back, and I love the NHL. I've loved it since I was a kid. Never done it at all. It's a serious challenge. I'm not positive it's going to work with the schedule. People would tell you, what are you doing? You got to put in this much study to do a couple of games. Is that worth it? Is the ROI solid? return on
Everything's return
investment.
on investment.
Maybe not, but you know what? It's a challenge. It's there. I just might do it for that reason, because it's hard, because it's tricky. And I just it goes back to your idea. Work ought to feel a little bit challenging or fulfilling, or you should do something else. If you're
Yeah.
just coasting through it, whatever the job is, I mean, and you could say, well, but my job is I just wait tables. Like no, there's ways to do that better. There's ways to pay attention to detail, to try to be perfect with your order, try to make no mistakes, try to be great with every customer, to make them feel like that. There's that's just a random example. It's whatever your job is. There are ways to do it better and improve by just putting a little more into it. You know?
Having that growth mindset is, I feel like, a big testament to what you were saying.
And
just
because
constantly growing and improving.
And because you've been, successful in your career, and have you ever felt like you've gotten stagnant? And have you, when you step out and, travel and do those things, does that kind of help you kind of, reset, or what is that like for you?
Yeah, I definitely got stagnant. I mean, there's certain parts of the job, certain responsibilities I've had that I felt like there's just no, I am going through the motions. I mean, I'm doing a decent job because I'm not going to fail to prepare, but I just don't feel the inspiration. I mean, ultimately what I do is a performance, right? So you can't, it's not just, crunching numbers and producing a spreadsheet. I have to perform for people, and I have to convey, hopefully authentically, that I'm fired up about it. And so there's been plenty of things. I was in a college basketball studio for many, many years, hoping to get out of their responsibility, but they just wouldn't let me. And I was there on a freezing studio because they turned the heat off at a certain point. So now these games tip off at midnight, and it's like, the UC Santa Barbara Gauchos against the Anteaters out there on the West Coast, and that's the and that's what you're doing. You're babysitting that game, and you're doing a halftime that hits about 1 a.m, and you're wrapping up the game about 2 a.m, and then you're driving home probably in the snow, and you rinse repeat the next day. Now, listen, and that's a job a lot of people would kill for, and I did it for a long time, but I was also able to tell that, hey, you know what? I'm not even nervous a little bit before we start. That's a dangerous sign. Like, you should feel something, right? You do this job because it's live TV. You want to feel the juices, and it doesn't mean you're panicked, but you want to feel something. And I couldn't feel anything. I was flatline, and that's not good. So I finally did get out of it, got into tenant, moved away. And, fortunately at this point, when you put in enough years, you can sort of have veto power, and I can sort of pick and choose what I do. And I'm lucky enough to do my two favorite sports, which are college football and tennis. I love the NFL too, but football and tennis are my two favorite sports, and we have the championship events in those sports. So it's like a ridiculously good setup for me. And so my whole life, I made choices based on, I want to have flexibility, not security. I want the ability to change courses if it doesn't feel right, if it's not fun. If I see something way more attractive and challenging over there, I don't want to be locked in. But I got to a point where I was doing what I wanted to do, and I couldn't imagine doing anything else and liking it more. And then I made the choice, okay, now I want security and long-term commitment. I signed a 9-year contract, which is, pretty unheard of in this business. I had never done anything longer than I think 4 years before that. And a lot of them were 2-3 years. But that, at your stage in life, I don't think you guys would want, you should want flexibility. You should want the ability to chart a different course if it doesn't feel right, more than security, rigidity, structure. You know what I mean? I hope that makes sense.
Well, yeah, because I feel like it's a little bit reversed, and I'm sure you kind of, with talking to college students on campuses, you've seen this. I'm sure, CH, you've seen this too, where, okay, you want to, and this happened to me too, and it was an issue that I had to deal with internally before I could even, tell, my parents and friends, hey, this is what I'm doing, and that's it. There's no negotiation. It's okay, once you're out of college, you need to get that secure job that just gets your foot in the door, and you have to be secure and you have to be safe, or else you're going to be unemployed in COVID, and it's going to be a nightmare. Like, that was something it was very real to me. I knew the whole time in the back of my head this is not the path that I'm going on. Yes, I'll get some funny looks. Yes, I'll get some pushback, but I had to kind of confront that internally before I could then go, all right, here's my plan. This is what I'm doing. If you have a problem with it, tough luck. How can you tell others to do that? Because it's not easy. And a lot of kids that I know right now are working 9-to-5s and they hate it. They're miserable. And
Man.
it's tough.
Oh, see, I hate hearing that because that's what I was talking about before. Like if they don't break out of that, like the best thing that can happen is a midlife crisis. But in between where they are and that point is 25 shitty years. Potentially, like at least in terms of the job. Doesn't mean your life can't be happy, but for a lot of us, what we do is a big chunk of that. And it's sometimes if you're miserable in the job, it's hard to have a happy life. It's hard to be happy yourself and have a happy relationship. But if you want to have,
the problem is when they accept the disappointment and accept the monotony. It's not all that good. I don't like it, but hey, what can I do about it? That's what scares me the most.
Yeah. I mean, it should scare them though, man. I mean, that's what I'm talking about with knowing yourself and again, this is something that gets drilled into your head. I know you guys believe this, but it really is true. If you're going to worry about being comfortable all the time, being secure, just be, this is boring. This isn't fulfilling or fun, but it's safe. I get a paycheck. What are you going to do? You got to do. No, that's, you're setting yourself up. And this isn't me. A lot smarter people than me. A lot of people that have broader life experiences who have lived the life of being an entrepreneur, of being out there on their own, of being untethered to some kind of corporate structure and 9-to-5 stuff. A lot more qualified than I am to talk about this. And they have Instagram feeds and they have books, and I encourage people to sort of look out and learn from them. But God, it's just way too early to settle, man.
Yeah.
I mean, we all have to make choices sometimes. I had to settle for choices in my career that weren't ideal, but my company wanted me to do it. I did this so I could do the other thing over there that was more fun. That's just part of it. We're not going to love everything about our career or everything about our life all the time. I mean, not everything is going to be wonderful and fulfilling and challenging and fun all the time. But as long as, that's why I don't really focus on goals or destinations. I believe more in directions. Just be in a direction. Don't have a destination because you don't know what the destination is. But if the direction feels shitty, if the direction is boring, if the direction,
so got to steer the boat.
if the day-to-day isn't great, well, that's what life is. It's a series of days. So if today ain't great and tomorrow ain't going to be any better and next Monday is going to suck too, I mean, understand that that's the direction you're going in. And that's not a good direction to go in.
No.
And so, so step out. I mean, I'm sure there's scary parts about getting out of school and not being employed in COVID and hitting the pause button. But I'm a firm believer in that. I really am. I think that, unless you just have, I mean, you own your own business, so you're able to sort of have that clear idea of what it is. But if someone is just getting into the job market and taking a job that they hate and it's not fulfilling, it's not going the right way, they don't like the people they're working on, all they're thinking about is getting off work and getting to the weekend, and you're young, stop it. Don't let it happen. There has to be something out there that you're passionate about. There has to be something that you enjoy doing and that you can see really being fulfilling for a long period of time as a way to make money. It doesn't mean your life's centered around that. I'd never advise anybody to center their life around their job. Be a whole person, have interests in things that are way beyond what you do for money. So you don't who are you? I'm a lawyer. That's the first thing you're saying about yourself is what you do for money? I mean, honestly, so many people, tell me about yourself. Well, I'm an accountant. Well, really? That's the number one thing you always self-identify with is what you do for a paycheck? I hope not, but
yeah,
don't
they
get in that
label
trap.
themselves as what they do, not like who they are, which I feel like is
once you do that though,
once
you become labeled as what you do for money, then it does become a trap. because if you identify with this is who I am. Once if you need to change what it is you do for money, it rocks your identity is up in the air. You don't feel
Yeah.
comfortable with that because you're associated with a job. No, don't be
And
associated with what you do for money.
and safety and security, I think it's a facade. You could say being an entrepreneur is risky, and damn right it is, but the job could fire you. They can
Yep.
lay you off. We saw it happen February and March of 2020. You're not as safe as you might think you are. And it's crazy to me how everyone has been, not everybody, but how a large majority of just the populace has been tricked into that mindset of this is more safe, this is risk free, and kind of avoiding that and reverse engineering it. I'll set myself up now and then later I'll take risks. I feel like it should be completely reverse engineered, and I'm sure you've heard Gary Vee say this a bunch too.
Oh yeah, now you're exactly right. If you set a pattern of not being willing to take risks and change course and get out of your comfort zone, it's hard to do later. It really is. I mean, then it takes like a seismic shock. It takes some really
Midlife crisis.
exactly some huge event in your life that forces you to see things differently. But those changes are hard to make. If you adopt it much younger, it's much better. Two things that you said. The idea of structure and security and being safe and control and that's based on a false idea that things in this world are controllable. That your future is there's almost control is an illusion. I'm sorry, but we think we have control over things far more than we do. So just accept the fact that there's much in this world you cannot control, and be okay with that, and understand that what you can control, your attitude, your effort, your habits, how you treat people, you can control that. You can always control that. And that's great power. That's not nothing. If you can control your attitude, if you can control your reactions to things, then that's more important than trying to control events that are uncontrollable. So the
Yeah.
idea that I'm going to be safe and secure is based on the idea that things are controllable and predictable, and they're not. I'm sorry. It's just a really fucking random place, the universe, and it's really uncontrollable. And just I try to not to get too Eastern because I'm not that well schooled, but I grab pieces of what I like, and
I'm the same
expect
way.
nothing, accept everything. Acceptance. It's hard. It's a hard thing. Like I'm not going to get off on a long story, but at Wimbledon, I got nabbed by track and trace because someone on my plane tested positive for COVID, and I was locked in my house. And we didn't have Wimbledon last year. I waited 2 years to be there, and I had to do the first 5 days going nowhere but work or home because I wasn't allowed to. Then I get hit with this other thing where they say, now you can't leave home. You can't work. You can't leave home. So the world's most famous tennis tournament is happening a quarter mile away. I'm there to call it. It's like the favorite thing I do. And some idiotic government policy, I'm sorry, but it's like an abundance of caution. Even though I tested negative 1,000 times, I had to sit in a room and couldn't do it. Now, was I happy about that? No. But I had to put into practice the things that I preach, which is acceptance. I can't
Yeah.
change this reality. I cannot violate these rules, or I'm going to embarrass the company. I'm going to embarrass the club. And I could get fined, and you could get banned from coming back to England, which is
No,
not a
not me.
good thing. I'd like to be
Nope.
there next year. So all these repercussions, you just have to push it out. It was really, really disappointing. I watched a lot of European Championship soccer on TV, and I made the best of it. And I just figured, how am I going to use this time when I come back to the booth? I'll be refreshed. I'll find a way to work out in the backyard. I'll find a way to cope mentally. I'll really watch all the matches so I'm not missing. When I come back, I'll be prepared. Again, that doesn't make me noble or smart, but I've learned over time acceptance of that. So make the best. We've all had to make adjustments. I really admire a whole lot of people in your guys' generation for how you've reacted to the limitations, of COVID. It's been a pretty shitty year and a half, 2 years, right? So in a lot of ways, yet I've talked to so many people. I've been so impressed by the way you've been flexible, adaptable, and found ways amidst all the frustration, because it's bound to happen. You guys have a different view of time than I do. You know, a year can feel like an eternity, where, you know, you get older, you realize a year can go by pretty quickly, too quickly, way too quickly. So you try to tell me it's just, this is a blip in your life. These are limitations and setbacks and conditions you will have to live with temporarily, that you will look back on and realize, oh, now I'll never take for granted what I had before, but I didn't have for a while. And hopefully people have grown from that. And I think there's a lot of people who've shown, you know, tremendous growth despite being really limited in what they've been able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris, I have one more question for you. I think this is a very important one, because I can tell you do your research and you've focused and implemented these type of growth patterns and daily practices in your life. What is the best piece of advice you can give to anyone that is trying to either accomplish something or like fulfill becoming the potential person they want to be? What's the one thing that you would say to someone that is trying to become whatever they want to be in their life?
Approach life with humility, but curiosity and confidence in yourself. Get to know yourself, get to know your strengths, so that you have confidence and belief in yourself, and know that what you think of yourself is way more important than what anyone else thinks of you. And sometimes it's not even what they think of you, it's what you think they think of you. There's so much bandwidth wasted on that. It's really unimportant in life. And all it's going to do is set you up for insecurity and anxiety and unhappiness if you focus too much on that. You know yourself, trust yourself, and learn over time how to let your instincts come through when you're faced with choices. Unless you have terrible instincts. No, I you know, hey, listen, no, if you have shitty instincts and your inner voice is wrong all the time, know that about yourself too.
Yeah, right.
Right. But whatever it is, you know, be okay being alone, and have a really durable, rock solid sense of happiness that doesn't depend on your boss, your job, your girlfriend, your spouse, your friends, their approval. Have a sense of yourself that is strong enough to withstand the blows that will inevitably come. I mean, they'll rock your world, but they're not going to rip you apart, right? I mean, we all get knocked off balance. We all get in a funk, but hopefully we're able to pull it out before it spirals, because we have that sense of self, and we've gotten to know ourselves, and we spent time alone, and we've been unafraid of challenges. Don't view challenge and discomfort as your enemy. Learn to embrace that, because that's what's going to make yourself better. And also, this is a lot of different things thrown together, but I think they're all connected. Is it? All we have is right now, man. I've enjoyed the last hour and 7 minutes, and I'm not thinking about anything else, and I wasn't thinking about the past. It's just the experience of doing this is fun, and that's all you have. And it really is true. And once something has happened and it's in the past, it's uncontrollable. Forget about it. What's happening in the future largely is out of your control, but you can help shape your future as something that you make, and that happens to you if you maintain the habits and the core beliefs and the values. So that you can control. And those are really, really important things. You tend to think of all the stuff that's really important I can't control. Well, you can't control most of the things, but what you can control is really important.
Yeah, and it's what you do now that matters.
Yep.
Completely absolutely agree. Well, Chris Fowler, you have been a blessing to be on this podcast.
I feel like you guys already knew what you're nodding your head. I didn't really have to say. I hope people listening, hope they connect with some of this. Like, again, I'm not an expert on anything. I try not to say, you must do this, you should do that. There's a lot of voices out there who are really smart, and that's how they present it, and that's okay. But ultimately, people have to figure out what works for them. So I try to avoid the 3 things you must do. They're just ideas.
What's your selling point?
They're just ideas from someone who's been around a while. So,
right.
Yeah,
you guys have your stuff together, and this has been fun because you're asking really good questions, and I think you really do understand. I'm not talking to you in a lot of this. I think you really understand what I'm saying. So
yeah, and that's the point of the podcast: get people with like-mindedness and to kind of spread a message that they see their truth and kind of spread it and see if anyone else resonates with it. That's kind of the main
And
point.
spend
So,
every day of your life in a Habits 365
There you go.
garment. I think that's
Yeah.
a really important lesson that I want to leave everybody with.
Absolutely.
if they can rock it as good as you, I mean, you
Right.
should give them that bit of advice,
I
you
mean,
know?
CH, you're the only one not following the protocol.
You go, yeah.
What happened?
We
got
I
us.
just kissed the logo.
Exactly. Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris, for coming on. We really appreciate it. This was definitely an awesome listen for those who will be listening to this. I'm super excited for them to hear this, and this was fantastic.
I had a great time doing it. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Thank you for
Appreciate
coming
it.
on board. This is Conscious Minds Podcast.